Hey everybody, it's Rockula, and welcome back to Rockula Retrospective. It is Monday, November the 10th, and that means it is time for the full review of The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 5, called Self-Help. All right, so this is the full review of Episode 5 called Self-Help, but just a little backstory. Last night I tried to do a Google Plus Hangout and watch The Walking Dead at the same time, and I watched The Walking Dead on a streaming site, so it just didn't jibe. So if you go right here, you can see my failed attempt at doing a Google Live Hangout. And then if you go here, you'll see the reaction review episode that I managed to save because I put this camera in front of me because I knew that this may not help. So here we go with the full review. And you got the Abraham gang, and they're traveling along in the bus. And there's a song playing on the radio, but I don't know what it is. So if you're out there and you know what the name of that song is, I'm guessing it's the same song that Abraham is going to be humming throughout this entire episode. So somebody please tell me, and I'll give you credit for it in the weekend re-review. By the way, speaking of the weekend re-review, after this, I'm going to go re-review everybody. I'm going to watch all the reviewers, and I'm going to get all my loose ends tied up, and I'll come back on probably Friday or Saturday to do the weekend re-review. But, okay, so what's the name of the song on the radio? And I'll tell everybody that you supplied me with that answer. So we see Eugene, and he really is starting to, in hindsight now after watching the show, the whole show, you can tell now that he's really starting to have second thoughts about this charade, and he's also starting to empathize with Gabriel because he keeps talking about Gabriel. And so I think that he is starting to think, maybe Gabriel isn't such a bad person because I'm such a coward. So things are a little bit more relaxed, and people start talking to him about his mullet. And it's just kind of a fun little inevitability that somebody was going to bring up the mullet. But then he talks about the only person that likes it is T. Brooks Ellis, who is his supposed boss. And I looked up the name, and I don't really think that there's an actual author named T. Brooks Ellis. I think that's just something that they made up for the show. You can, I just did a quick cursory research on that. So if you're out there and let me know if there's a real T. Brooks Ellis. But to me, it just sounds like, a Texas name because he's from Houston, like T. Boone Pickens or something, or like Louisiana, like T-John Thibodeau, who was a big wrestler when I was a kid. Anyway, so now the bus overturns, and we're going to find out later why the engine caught on fire and made the bus overturn. But then we have a flashback. And at first you don't know if it's a flashback or not, but it is somebody killing somebody with a can of food, and it turns out that that's Abraham. He flashes back to the bus, and everybody's checking to see if Eugene is okay, and he says something about Reverend Gabriel Stokes, and then he says something about being a sinner, but I can't understand everything that he said. So once again, if you know what he's talking about, comment below, and I'll give you credit in the weekend re-review. They bust out, kill the walkers. Then Abraham pulls off the great move of the night where he uses one walker to block another one. I guess it's a new technique called walker blocking. I've had that happen to me once or twice when I'm out at the club. I get walker blocked all the time. So yeah, he pulls off the walker block moment, and here we come to my first common sense moment of the episode, and that is Eugene kind of saves Rosita by hitting the walker in the back with a knife, but at the same time, wouldn't Eugene know that the only way to kill a walker is to get him in the head? You know, it's just something that kind of bugged me a little bit, but, you know, the excuse could be in the middle of the heat of, you know, all of this chaos, because you could see it. He's freaking out and zoning out. In the middle of all of this chaos, he just blanks out and doesn't remember what to do. So that could be an excuse, whatever. After this fight, we bring attention to the fact that Abraham's hand is injured. And is that going to become a factor later on in the series? Because they sure do bring a lot of attention to this hand injury. Who knows? Maybe it could get gangrenous. Maybe he could get walker blood in it, whatever. But the bus catches fire. So no hope of turning over the short bus. So now we have Glenn assuring Abraham that they still support him. And this is where I'm going to address you Glenn haters again, especially you behind the mask dudes. Glenn ain't such a bad guy. And in fact, in the last couple episodes, I was talking about people saying that Tyrese is going to be the moral compass of this show. But obviously, you know, we had Dale. Dale was a failure at being a moral compass. And I think that Glenn is becoming a pretty good moral compass because he still wants to maintain his humanity, but at the same time, he understands the importance of loyalty and group unity, because as soon as people start splitting up and dissenting in a major way, that's when somebody gets killed, because it happens over and over again in this series. So, thumbs up to Glenn. He's becoming quite the higher ranking leadership material type guy. So maybe he could be the new moral compass for this show. I'd rather see him than Tyrese, obviously. And this is the part where we find out that Abraham took a shot to the nutsack. And Tara brings up bikes, but nothing really ever comes of it. Maybe it'll manifest itself later on in another episode. But then before they leave, Eugene looks at the walker that he helped kill, because he didn't kill it. He just distracted it. And then he spits on the walker. And is that him starting to grow some walker stomping nads? Because he really needs some if he's going to keep being valuable to this group, especially after what's about to happen. Go back again, flashback to Abraham's backstory, and we find that his wife and children watched him kill all those people, and they're now deathly afraid of him. And before you go judging them too much, think about this. This is when it happens. I imagine that this is the moment where the shit hits the fan, and it's survival. So a lot of people, that's how, you know, one of the main tenets of zombies or walkers or whatever you want to talk about, an undead apocalypse, is the fact that a lot of people become infected because they can't get it through their head that it's time to throw your humanity out of the window and become an animal and defend yourself. So, yeah, you could hate on the wife and kids, but at the same time, who's to say what is going to be the way that you react when that happens? Next, we come in and they take refuge in a bookstore. Eugene displays his resourcefulness by creating fire with a battery and a strip of something. Now, I talked to my friend Professor Meat Pie, and I'm going to have to go back and look at the scene again, and I'll probably do another version of this in the weekend re-review, but it appears that he took some kind of strip of some kind of material that is impregnated with some kind of metal or phosphorus. Can I say some kind of more? Anyway, so what you do is if you take a strip that's made out of that and there's metal in the strip, say it's like a scratch strip from a a book of matches. I think I saw a book of matches, or any kind of thin piece of metal. If you touch those to the poles of a battery, especially if there's paper, if it's like something adhered to paper, that paper's going to catch fire. So that's how he did that, and it caught fire to that. I'll go into more detail in the weekend re-review. And once again, Abraham's humming. I'm assuming it's that same song. Then Maggie pulls out a thread of a book binding. And here's a part where I have to include my reaction, because I was kind of chuckling at myself that I went this direction. But I thought that, obviously the thread was going to be to sew something up. And then all of a sudden I thought, is she going to... Oh, she's going to have to sew up his nutsack. Oh, it's his hand. Glenn and Abraham have their sharing, bonding moment. And Abraham talks about this fact that people who are alive right now are stronger, which is a concept brought up by the Terminus douche when he was kind of messing with Tyrese's head. And, he said, you either are strong or you live behind walls. And he thought that Tyrese, the way he was acting, lived behind walls. But that's what's going on right now. Is this is even a more intensely dangerous world when it comes to humans than it was before, because all of the innocent people that didn't adapt have perished. Either that, or they have been behind walls, or they've been smart enough to cheat people into defending them like Eugene did. But that leaves some good people and a bunch of really bad people. So that's the whole point about this show, is that the more into the show you get, there's going to be a lot more bad people, because they're pretty much the only people that are left. Despite Abraham taking a shot to the nunsack, he decides he needs to get laid before he goes to sleep, and Eugene watches it. And one of the really, truly most hilarious moments in this real dismal world. Then Tara catches Eugene watching them have sex. They establish a little bit of a closer friendship, and Eugene explains to Tara that he feels very vulnerable, and that he's worried that once he helps saves the world, that he'll be cast off, and they won't want to protect him or share their supplies with him. But, she assures him that he's one of the gang now. He's part of the family. Because, think about it. They had their doubts about Tara, and she proved her worth. So it's one of those things that, he's going to prove his worth. But then he confesses about putting the glass in the gas tank, and Tara makes him promise not to tell anybody. And that's going to be something else that connects them, but at the same time, that's a secret that she now has. Now, Abraham goes back to another flashback, which is, kind of like a transitional flashback. Nothing really happens. Rosita is bandaging Abraham's hand. And then they start a theme that's going to run throughout this whole episode, where they start naming people that died on the way from Houston. And then they start to, kind of figure out what they're going to do next. And this is where Rosita finally starts to assert herself as a character. There's a lot of reviewers that I watch that think that Rosita is just a piece of hot fluff to wear, a tied up shirt and expose her navel and have some Daisy Dukes on. But, she's starting, every episode, in this episode, she continuously garners these power-up points. And so, yeah, once they wake up in the morning, Abraham has scouted out a fire station. He's looking to get the fire truck running when he starts it and unwittingly opens a door that's been blocked by a fire truck. The truck dies, a tire rolls out, and then we find out why that door was shut. Here we go. Rosita gets extra power points now by showing up Abraham and telling him, "Look, that's not the intake. The intake's up on the roof, and you could have just inserted a wah 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 right there, but that was definitely a classic comedy burn right there." Then here comes the scene I've been waiting for since way back in between season 4 and 5, and that is when they had the sneak preview of the entire season 5, and it was the scene where the walkers were getting shot with a water cannon. And I knew that this was going to be cool, and it turned out to be really cool. It's the most creative way to deal with walkers that I've seen so far. Eugene steps up and contributes on a physical level by mowing the walkers down with the water cannon. Now, this is a continuity comment that I have, and it's just for people like me who will pause and take a screenshot of, like I couldn't get over that whole thing that nobody noticed that the Cadillac kidnapped Beth, but then the black compact was the one that Daryl and Carol followed. But when they show the overhead shot of the scene as Eugene has finished and they're all just laying there, they don't have the writing, but then we go back, Abraham's up there, and then there's the writing on there. So I just don't buy that, and I know that's really tiny, but here's something else that I had to say about Abraham standing up on the roof of the fire truck. Watch your nutsack there. So we got Abraham flashing back again, wakes up to find his wife and his children gone, and she has written a note that says, "Don't try to find us." And then we cut back to the fire engine again, and we see that it has stalled. Eugene is reading a copy of H.G. Wells' Things to Come, The Shape of Things to Come, excuse me. And a little bit of a side note about that. That is a book that accurately predicted World War II, and then went on to explain that all the way up to 2016, there will be a utopian society in 2016 where everybody has an opportunity to become an equal, both in intellectual and economic status. I haven't read the book, but I watched the film in the 1936 film adaptation. I use it a ton for video mixing because it's got a lot of great visuals. And I won't go into a huge amount of detail about that. I might do a book report on it for the middle of the season break. But I will tell you this, that one of the tenets of this story is that, yeah, we had World War II and then it consumed the earth and we used up all of our resources and it caused an Armageddon. But what they don't really talk about is there were, decades of authoritarian rule until they reached this utopia. So who knows? Are they talking about an authoritarian rule that's about to come about? And is it going to be the authoritarian rule of the higher-ups at the hospital that I've been pontificating about as well? So is this foreshadowing? Maggie tries to figure out Eugene and references this Samson's riddle thing that says, and here we go, I'm going to quote this right this time: "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." And, I still want to munch on that and mull it over in my brain. But one of the things that when I did research on this that they didn't mention was that the Philistines couldn't answer the riddle, so they blackmailed Samson's wife to get the answer. And is that going to be a reference to some kind of shenanigans that are going to take place soon? And is it going to be a Samson's riddle? I don't know. Glenn smells something foul on the wind, and we see them coming upon an area that's been overrun. I couldn't really tell when I first watched it, and then when I went back, I did a screen cap, and I searched around, and it looks to me like it is a large cattle ranch. And when I say a cattle ranch, I don't mean like a wide open space where they're, whipping cows and going, yeah, this is full of cattle pens. And my guess is that the walkers have eaten all the cattle, and that's what the smell is. But can anybody out there, and you can, please say this in the comments, but has anybody remembered from this whole series a walker attacking and or eating an animal? Have we seen an animal? Well, they did go after the horse. So yeah, they went after the horse. So if they'll go after the horse, they'll go after cattle. If you remember in downtown Atlanta, when Rick was there on the horse, the walkers ate the horse. So I just answered my own question. Thanks, Rockula Retrospective, for answering that question. I'll make sure to mention you in the weekend re-review. So the whole group says that we gotta find another way around this. Abraham resists, and then he loses his cool and starts to attack Eugene and drag him back to the truck. I don't know if he was attacking Eugene, but he dragged him. And I don't know what his intentions were, but the situation really starts to escalate until Eugene drops the big bomb and shouts over and over that he's not a scientist. And I'm guessing that his motivation is that there was only one way to figuratively slap that entire group in the face. Like in any fucking comedy where somebody starts going hysterical and they get slapped in the face, like on Airplane. That's what he did. And he did that in order to temporarily pacify the situation. We come up on the main instance here where we have a backstory on all of the names of the people that died on the way here from Houston. And, is this going to play into something in the future, or are they just giving us names to make us understand how many people died? Abraham loses it, goes after Eugene, and then Rosita further asserts herself and gets a couple of more power-ups when she steps in between Eugene and Abraham and puts her hand on the gun and threatens to shoot him pretty much. Then we go to the shot of Abraham's hand again. So they keep talking about the hand. I think that's going to be something down the road, but you never know. Abraham walks off and has his breakdown and flashes back to finding his wife and children. I'm assuming it's his wife. And they're eaten by walkers. And I just have to stop for a moment and say, I really want to give kudos to the makers of this show for not inserting one of these moments. Coming to the end of the episode, and finally we see the backstory on when Abraham met Eugene, and then that's the end of the episode. So here we go with the sneak previews for episode 6, which is going to be called Consumed. And I watched the AMC version, and I went and watched the New Zealand trailer. Any of you guys that watch regularly know that the New Zealand trailer, way more information than the American trailer. So what it was is they were both the same, and that's Daryl and Carol following the hospital cops. Looks like they infiltrate the hospital, but it only shows Daryl and Carol, and no one else is in the preview except for the very last moment of the preview where we see Daryl with a blonde girl that appears to be Beth, but we don't know. So, but then again, you never know because they're deliberately planting false and misleading evidence in every coming attraction, every preview of every episode. So just because it says something in a preview doesn't mean anything, because they'll transplant any piece of footage and any piece of audio into that and make you think that it's going in a completely different direction. So, all right, that is the big wrap up for episode 5, and I got some big news that's coming, and it concerns the Google Live Hangout. Obviously, I told you at the first of this that it didn't work out, but I have a friend right now that is going to talk to the wife And the wife may consent to let me and my friend do a live Google Hangout from his place. He's got a big screen TV. He's got satellite, so I can live stream in and out just fine, and we won't have any problems. And this is a guy that I've got a lot of history with and have done some videos with. So if the wife says it's okay, then I will have a new headquarters for the initial reaction review episode, and it will be a live hangout streaming in real time as we're watching the show. So big step up in production value because I'm going to be able to set it up. It's a nice living room setup. So check with me. I should know by the weekend re-review. And yeah, here's the playlist of all the reviews that I've done so far for season 5. Thanks to everybody that is contributing, and I am going to go now do my research for the weekend re-review. Looking at all you reviewers out there, if you have a favorite reviewer, please let me know, and I'll go check them out, and I'll give you my opinion on what I thought about them. Although, there's some people that I just don't want to review because I don't care for them, and I don't want to be a hater. But, if somebody merits talking about, hell yeah, I'm glad to add that to the list. So join me this weekend, and I'm Rockula, and this is Rockula Retrospect.